welcome to this deep dive. We take the sources you're interested in and, well, we pull out the key stuff.
Yeah, what really matters.
Exactly. And today, we're digging into something, a question I think a lot of people wonder about. How does a country with so many resources end up poor and, politically unstable?
It's a classic tragic story, unfortunately.
Our mission today is to unpack the rule of Mobutu Sese Seko. He ran the Democratic Republic of Congo, which he renamed Zaire, for a long time.
Yeah, we're basically trying to understand a huge story of corruption, power, and, frankly, decades of deception.
So the timeline we're looking at is Mobutu seizing power in 1965 after independence and some rocky years.
Right, a lot of instability then.
And he stays in power until 1997. And you mentioned the name change to Zaire. That was part of his whole authenticity idea, trying to shed the colonial past. Symbolically, at least.
Exactly, a big part of his initial consolidation of power.
Okay, let's get into it. The first thing that really jumps out from the sources is this massive effort Mobutu made to build his own image, this cult of personality.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't just being president. He styled himself as the Leopard of Zaire, this sort of father figure for everyone.
And it wasn't subtle, was it?
Not at all. And what's really striking is how systematic it was. This wasn't some organic thing. It was completely engineered to keep him in control.
How so?
Well, his picture was literally everywhere. Statues, huge portraits in all the government buildings, even, private shops and businesses had to display it.
Wow. So unavoidable.
Pretty much. It created this feeling that Mobutu was there. So questioning him, that felt like questioning the nation itself. It wasn't just ego. It was about making sure people wouldn't dare challenge him. A psychological thing.
Building that unquestioning loyalty.
And that kind of propaganda, it digs deep. It can shape a country's political culture for generations.
Yeah, I can see that. And it wasn't just pictures, right? The sources mentioned schools, media.
The whole system.
Yeah.
Schools taught his ideology. The news glorified him constantly. Even the arts were pushed to celebrate him. Absolute loyalty was the demand.
So here's the crucial link then. How did this image, this carefully built persona, allow for the massive personal enrichment?
Well, the image was the perfect cover. It provided the smokescreen, this distraction, while the real business of his rule went on, which was essentially looting the country.
He basically treated Zaire like his personal property.
Completely. He funneled state funds into his own accounts, used state companies for his own gain. I mean, he became one of the richest people on the planet while Zaire just got poorer and poorer.
It's staggering when you think about what Zaire actually has. The natural wealth is immense. Cobalt, copper, diamonds, gold. I mean, it should be a rich country.
It's a treasure trove, yeah. But that wealth didn't build the nation. It built Mobutu's bank accounts.
So how did that work mechanically? How did the resources become tools for him?
Well, looking into it, you see, he set up this whole network. He put his loyal buddies, his cronies, in charge of the mining sectors. So the goal wasn't, let's develop Zaire. It was, how do we get this money into our pockets? Often offshore accounts hidden away.
Right, the kind of places with strict banking secrecy. Makes it almost impossible to get back.
Exactly. And that's the classic resource curse, isn't it? The very wealth that could save a country ends up trapping it because of corruption and weak government. Zaire's a textbook case.
And it wasn't just Mobutu and his circle acting alone. The sources really point a finger at foreign companies, too, from Belgium, France, the U.S.
Yes, that's a really important and maybe uncomfortable part of the story. These corporations got amazing access to Zaire's resources.
Favorable terms, minimal regulation.
Pretty much. And the benefits for the actual Congolese people, almost zero. It was exploitation, pure and simple.
So there was a kind of deal being done. Support from Mobutu in exchange for access.
That's the quid pro quo, yeah. He gave them access, political favor, and in return, they helped keep him looking legitimate, or at least didn't cause trouble. But the cost was huge.
For the people, you mean?
Yeah. Terrible working conditions, massive environmental damage, and just the fundamental injustice of seeing your country's wealth shipped away.
And beyond the anti-communist angle, Western governments often just wanted those strategic minerals, didn't they?
Absolutely. Cobalt, especially, was vital. So geopolitical needs, short-term gains, kind of trumped concerns about Mobutu's rule. It's a difficult ethical trade-off, looking back.
And the sources mention oil, too, not just minerals, around Lake Tanganyika.
Yeah, the Congo oil connection. It's the same story, different resource. Multinationals, Mobutu's inner circle, making huge profits. Local people living right there, still poor.
Just another layer of the same extraction model.
Exactly. Which brings us to something called Zaire communization. This is fascinating and very deceptive.
Okay, what was that about?
Well, on paper, it sounded great. Nationalistic, take businesses owned by foreigners and give them to Congolese people, empowering the nation, right?
That's good. Like
Yep.
taking back control of the economy.
That was the spin. But the reality, the sources are clear. The real goal was just to give these businesses to Mobutu's friends and allies, cement his power even further.
So not empowering the average Congolese person at all.
Not remotely. Foreign businesses were taken over, sure, but they just got handed to the loyalists.
And the result was?
Predictable, really. Mismanagement everywhere. Corruption went through the roof, and the economy, instead of growing, was crippled.
So a policy that sounded like nationalism was just another tool for personal gain.
Precisely, a really stark example of that.
Now, holding all this together, the corruption,
yeah.
the image,
They-
required muzzle, right?
Yeah.
The military.
Oh, definitely. Mobutu poured money into the military, not necessarily to make it effective at, say, defending borders.
But effective at control.
Exactly. It was loyal to him, well-funded, and absolutely brutal. Its main job was crushing any dissent, any hint of opposition.
It was basically an instrument of fear.
A very tangible one. Protests, calls for reform, they were met with violence. The sources talk about killings, torture, people being forced from their homes. The human cost was immense.
And this suppression, it wasn't hidden, was it? He ruled with an iron fist.
No, not at all. Political opponents, journalists trying to report the truth, activists. If you spoke out, you were in danger. Prison, torture, assassination. These were real risks.
And yet, and this is the part that's hard to reconcile, on the world stage, he was painting himself as what?
As the West's best friend in Africa, a key ally against communism. That's the incredible contradiction.
Brutal dictator at home, anti-communist hero abroad.
That's how he played it. And he played it very skillfully, navigating the Cold War politics, which leads us to that international complicity again.
Right. It's tough to look at, but the sources show Western powers, the U.S., France especially, propping him up for decades.
The Cold War context was everything. He was their guy against the Soviets in the region.
So his terrible record,
Yeah.
the corruption, the human rights abuses, that just got overlooked.
Yeah. It seems that way, largely. The strategic goal of stopping communism seemed more important at the time.
And the U.S. provided actual aid. Money, military support.
Yes, substantial financial and military assistance, which, directly helped keep his regime in power. It's a sobering look at how geopolitics can override concerns for people's basic rights.
It really makes you think about the interplay between that carefully crafted image and the actual mechanics of corruption.
They fed each other, definitely. The image provided cover, and the stolen wealth funded the apparatus that maintained the image and suppressed dissent.
But it couldn't last forever, right? What started to chip away at his power?
Well, eventually things started to unravel, especially in the 1990s. Decades of stealing and mismanagement finally caught up. The economy was a wreck.
And global conditions changed.
Right. Commodity prices fell, which hit Zaire hard. Plus, people inside the country were getting bolder, dissent was growing, and then the big one, the Cold War ended.
Ah, so his value as an anti-communist ally just evaporated?
Pretty much overnight. Suddenly, his Western backers weren't so keen to ignore the downsides of his rule. He wasn't indispensable anymore.
The ground shifted under him.
Completely. The foundations just crumble. By 1997, a rebellion led by Laurent Kabila finally pushed him out.
And Zaire became the Democratic Republic of Congo again. The end of an era.
A very long, very dark era.
But the impact? It didn't just end when he left power, did it? The sources paint a pretty grim picture of his legacy.
Grimm's putting it mildly. It's a legacy of betrayal, corruption on an unimaginable scale, exploitation. The Congolese people paid a terrible price.
Resources looted, economy shattered.
And more than that, the political and social fabric of the country was torn apart. Those divisions, that fragmentation, you still see the effects today.
So the poverty, the conflicts, the instability in the DRC now,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of that traces back to Mobutu's time.
Absolutely. The systemic corruption, the weakening of institutions, the culture of impunity, he left incredibly deep scars. If you want to understand the challenges the DRC faces today, you really have to understand the Mobutu years.
So wrapping this up, the key takeaway from this deep dive feels, well, quite stark. Mobutu's rule is this cautionary tale, isn't it?
A powerful one. It shows just how destructive unchecked power and corruption can be, especially when you've got all those natural resources that should be making people prosperous.
It really makes you think.
And maybe here's something for you, the listener, to consider. How might international politics, global economic interest, how might they still be, perhaps subtly, propping up or undermining governments in developing countries today?
Right. What are the less obvious ways that might still be happening even after the Cold War?
Yeah. It's worth reflecting on those dynamics.